extent when choosing a school for the young ones. In Sweden, the parents and the students are free to choose a school, whatever school they want to go to. It's their choice. And we also have schools that nowadays, since 20 years, we have introduced what we call, we do not only have commune schools or commune-owned schools. We also have schools that we call freestanding schools. They have become so many, so today 10% of the population who goes to the grundskola goes to a freestanding school, which is creating a solution on schooling in another way than the mainstream of the commune schools are doing. So that's the idea of having them as an interesting part of our school system. It was actually introduced by a government that was not social democratic, but the social democrats heritaged the idea and they made it their own, and it has been kept for 20 years over several political changes. Our National School Inspection uses the results as a basis for their inspections that appear every third year. And when I think of how we are doing the work in our schools, you could say that the teachers in our schools are, so to say, very important persons. They work in such a way that we train our teachers, and when I look at the grundskola, we take that one, the comprehensive school, the one that runs from when you are 7 until you are 16. In that one, we have said to ourselves, it's good to have teachers to follow the same students over a long time. When we began the grundskola, teachers were expected or usually follow the students for 3 years. But we changed our teacher education, and nowadays you follow the students from between 3 up till 6 years. So you have the same teachers for a long time, which sometimes can be a burden. If the teacher and the family is hating each other, but then you have to develop it. That's life. You live with people who are crazy around yourself. So we have said to ourselves, it's not a good idea to or create or present a new teacher every year. Let's go with it, because then we can learn how to survive together and solve conflicts. So we are keen on solving conflicts in a peaceful way, also between parents and teachers, and student and teachers, and among students, because they have to exist together for 9 years. And that could be as long as a marriage, some marriages. We expect from our teachers that they base their leadership on learning diagnosis and individual development plans for each student. We expect from them and train them to use feedback to students as well as to parents. So they need to do that. We train the teachers. We have them trained at the universities for between 3 years, that is the preschool teachers, up till 4.5 years, that is the upper secondary teachers. But we don't see teachers as ready products when they leave the universities. We see them as people who will develop for at least during 40 years. So in Sweden, we have each year, each teacher is spending 13 days on their in-service training. And we have done so during the last 20 years. When we changed the system in the 50s, we gave the teachers 5 days per year for in-service training. We found, after years of changing of school systems, improving the local school, giving more autonomy to the local school, that it was not enough. So we said, we need to train the teachers more often, and usually the teachers train together at the school level, so they go together for 13 days. Some of the days they might have as an individual training, but mainly it's a collective body that is training together to solve problems, to learn how to solve problems, and to face them in a new way. We also see our school leaders as most important to carry an autonomous and responsible school. So if we are going to go on with what we have been doing, and we have tried to change our school system for the last 50 years in steps, going over from a highly centralized system, when we made the change going from a diversified elite school picking out system over to a comprehensive system, we were a highly centralized system. So we could take a decision and made everyone to do it in the same time. But since then, we have seen that the motivation of school leaders and teachers is going down, and you need to own the work in your school and be responsible over the resources that are there if you are going to make a high quality work at the school. And therefore we have also tried to create or to work with school leaders that are good on creating good visions together with the teachers, that are keen on creating a high internal democracy. We have a lot of decisions that you have to take in a school, that in Swedish schools you take it as a full body of the professionals, or sometimes you have a specific steering committee where also students and parents are participating. But we request from our school leaders a high degree of professionalism. Therefore, we have developed education for school leaders, and we started to do it very systematically from 1975 and onwards. I was then leading our national educational program for school leaders, where we started it before people were selected for a job. In Sweden, you apply for a job as a school leader, and nowadays people don't hesitate to do that. When we investigated the situation in 2007, we found that at an average, we had around 15 people to apply for a position as a school leader. So it's a competition to become a school leader in Sweden. You have a higher salary as a school leader, but we created a system in the 70s where people could go together in what we call study circles to use about 10 meetings during a year to taste the role of a school leader before the job starts, so that you can feel secure that I want to take this managerial role onto my shoulder. When you become a school leader, when you are selected for it, you apply for a position, the local commune decides who we are going to choose. So that is a communal decision taken. When you are getting into the position of being a school leader, and in Sweden, in earlier times, we choose people from the same school as the position was taken. After debates in the 70s and 80s, we have created another fashion. Today, almost no one is selected from the body of the school. Why not? We know that if you choose someone from the same school as the position is free, you create problems. Because a person who is a well-known teacher, a good fellow who you can share a nice bottle of wine together with, always have difficulties to change roles and become a leader of that school. So we try to pick out people from other schools. Today, about 80% is taken from another school. But when they start their career as school leaders, they have an introduction period. During the early phase, they go into a deepening education that is nowadays a 3-year-long education that you participate part-time during the first years of your new job, and you go on within service training. The tasks of the school leader, as we have understood it today, is to work with the subjects or things like this, to formulate the ideology of the school, to structure time, tasks, and people. And in Sweden, we don't have central timetables, so to say. We have in our national curriculum, we say, for instance, about the comprehensive school that you have to distribute the 6,600 hours that the students have during their 9 years, but it's up to you as a school to distribute them when they are studying different subjects. We have what subjects they should study, but how you put them into, if you use weekly programs according to old traditions, or if you compose it into more compromised periods, it's up to you as a school. And that is decisions that are taken by directors and school teachers. The school director, the rector as we call him, or her, 65% of the school directors in Sweden are women. So it's a female work nowadays. And that has shifted rather quickly. That is to direct the evaluation work. It is to also show reactions on what people are doing, among other things, in the salary, in the individualized salary. And you have to find solutions on administrative and economic problems. And you have to identify patterns of relations on the school. To work with conflicts is one part where we train our school leaders to deal with that. Not only conflicts between teachers, but also between teachers and parents, and of course between students. We try to influence the brains of the new school leaders to make a choice where they have to develop things, where they can go for preservation of solutions in their schools. But they have a great deal of freedom together with their staff to find solutions that they feel is important. And as I said, we have been working with this type of program since 1975, and here I made a small table about how much time we spend on it. And you see that during the first 3 years, for instance, there is about 6 weeks plus homework, as we call it, and annual seminars that is going on. So we actually, what we do in the field of education in Sweden is obviously that we believe in education, also of teachers and school leaders. And we see that that has been one of the keys to come over to be able to give the responsibility and the autonomy to the schools. That is by training and preparing teachers and school leaders to take that responsibility. Hadn't we trained the teachers and the school leaders to be good at evaluation, then we had created problems. Evaluations are used when you make distributions of money in the commune, and teachers and school leaders have educated our politicians how to use evaluations. The politicians have the power to make up their minds. We, as well as you, have given or have constructed the political system in such a way, but we also have to inform the politicians so that we can go for sustainable solutions on problems. So therefore, we don't change over and over in the educational system. Our last national curriculum was presented in 1994. We have had it for 15 years now, and it takes around 20 years to make a shift of our national curriculums. So over different political agendas, we have to stay with it, and teachers need time together with school leaders to find solutions. Yeah, I said something to myself that when I'm here, I might say something about the future. So I say that we think that teachers and school leaders, and that goes for my country, but I have a feeling that it might go for Catalonia too, that more people working in schools need to produce knowledge about their own practice. Because if we are going to be able to, for instance, use evaluations, it's no meaning by measuring the results of what teachers have been doing if you don't understand how the results was created. So as for other professions where you need to understand the relationship between cause and effect, we have tried to help our teachers and school leaders to train their brains to think of cause and effect. The effect is the learning results the markings of the students, the test results in international comparisons, but the cause is, of course, activities that the students had under the leadership of teachers. So then we have to look at what were we doing, why do we have these variations, and what we think is important is that teachers and school leaders are engaged in that work so that we don't allow researchers like myself, for instance, to deal with that problem now and then or all over, because then it will become a specialized part of the academic systems. We also think that teachers and school leaders need to become more systematic in the use of time within their professions to build knowledge in their school about learning processes and results. So that is a feeling, but not only a feeling, it's also a conviction of mine that we need to spend time on that one. Because I know that teachers, who are the main actors among those who get paid in schools, they are not the main actors of schools, that's students. Teachers in the future will probably continue to learn. They will go on by delivering lessons in Sweden like here in Spain. But I think that teachers need to concentrate hard in the coming 100 years to understand how they can make the same shift of their work as the medical profession was making a couple of 100 years ago, when they started to find out how you can put a diagnosis on a illness. But in the case of teachers, we need to put a diagnosis on a very non-ill situation. That is how we learn. Because if teachers are going to be able to help and support students, they need to understand and know how learning is appearing. Nowadays, teachers are getting help by brain researchers, but it's not enough. You have to understand it from another part of it. I guess that teachers in the future will, and I especially look at my country where we have this battle going on between the idea of a school being a place where you teach and a school being a place where you learn. That teachers need to go over more and more to lead learning, which is not the same thing as teaching. That is to follow the learners and to challenge them and to push them and to make life difficult sometimes for the learner. And we know that within the teaching profession, teachers in the future will cooperate with adults, not only with colleagues, but also with parents. I say to myself that we need to help teachers in the future to understand the local organization much better, especially if we trust the teachers and the school leaders to be responsible for their schools. Then they need to understand what the school is. And we in Sweden, as you do in Catalonia, we are struggling with the problem of having teachers to losing respect, you could say, or having teachers who are not seen as the most wonderful profession in the world or the highest status. We can't afford to pay all the money that some of us would like to give to teachers. We know that. So we have to work in other ways. One another way is to have teachers to appear more often in the public space, to make their voice heard in meetings like this, in the press, on the television. Teachers need to be there to tell stories about how wonderful things they are doing, instead of getting only the criticism of where the shortcomings are. So that is something that we work on. And to finalize my little lecture on Sweden, I also can say to you that we have, since the last 30, 40 years, worked hard on getting the teachers and the school leaders to understand their schools as a local organization, where all these factors of a school need to be well known, to be seen, to be observed, to be understood by the people working in a school if they are going to take responsibility for it. So they need to see that they have to have some shared aims, which costs time for teachers and school leaders and parents and students to find out. That you need to develop communication systems that are smart, that are helpful, that create a good deal of flow in the system of communication, where it's also important to look at the groupings of a school. In many schools, we have seen that we go with a tradition. So, for instance, we don't mixture the ages of the students by some reasons. But we know that students learn better by meeting each other over the barrier of the year when they were born, because they have a good deal of social learning that they need to do in the school. And younger children want to learn from models who are older, but all younger children don't appreciate teachers as models in their school, so they have to find other models. So therefore we have discussions about how do you do the groupings. The decision-making system is important, especially when you train people to be participants in democracy. Then adult people in schools need to invite not adult people to participate, to have them to train to express their will, etc. We know that the time budget of a school is very important. We know that the norms are important, but they have to be seen and known by the school teachers and the school leaders. And so is for evaluation regularities and reward systems. So we try to influence the teachers' brains and the school leaders' brains during their training and during their in-service training with all this. So, and at last, we also know that if schools are going to be responsible and autonomous, it's not enough to create a smart local organization, because that takes part, or it gives possibilities to go on with what you are expected to reach, the learning. But the grown-up people, the adult people, the teachers and the school leaders also need to organize their time, their ways of solving problems, so they act as a learning organization. So that they use their time at school to create learning. So for instance, if you want to make actions in your school that helps you to see what are the better ways, for instance, to learn, which we'll take as example, to learn English. I saw schools in the commune discuss that some years ago when some people in the school said, let's try another way of learning English than having 3 lessons per week. So they explained to themselves that their school was English territory for 2 weeks. And during that 2-week period, everyone in the school was speaking English. So it was a totally crazy period. And in Swedish schools, you have not only teachers working there, you have janitors, you have every day we serve a meal to the children, a warm meal, so we have people cooking food. We have people who are not very well trained in English. We have teachers who work with the handicrafts. I remember the one in one of the schools who was working in English that week. He said to the students, take up the hyvel. He mean a cutter, which is called hyvel in Swedish. And he told the children, I don't know the name of this. You have to find your English teacher. She is sitting somewhere. And I don't care about her. I call this hyvel anyway. And he worked half Swedish with the whole thing. The children loved this period because they saw Swedish teachers, janitors, food people, directors speaking bad English. And their self-esteem in the language English became higher after that period. The school learned that this is an alternative on how we can help people to train such a peculiar thing as a foreign language, instead of having the formal lesson 3 times for a week. So that is how we do it, and we try to stimulate our schools to think as schools and to learn together with other schools and to follow systematic ways of things that I have written in this little PowerPoint presentation. And last and not least, we try to help school to keep a memory and use it in future situations, which is among the most difficult things to help a school to do. How can we organize memory in a school when we think that teachers and school leaders are the memory? How can we do that? And we try to help ourselves to use, among other things, the computer. So, now you have got some insights into the peculiarity of Sweden. And I suppose I haven't told everything, so there might be questions.
Bueno, moltíssimes gràcies. Moltíssimes gràcies per la pedagogia de la seva exposició al professor Ekholm, també per al detall que ens ha permès fer aquesta immersió en el sistema educatiu suec i en l'escola, passant també per una visió global, des de les finalitats del que és l'escola, la manera d'organitzar-se, de governar, la manera d'avaluar, apuntant nous indicadors, noves maneres de fer, apuntant també tot el tema de la direcció de centres. És a dir, que ens ha fet tot un mapa i ens ha plantejat la possibilitat de conèixer. Jo en algun moment sentia que estant aquí, com estem a la sala del magma, hem viatjat una mica, hem pogut fer una petita immersió i com quan un està sempre a l'estranger, això de ben segur que ha provocat sorpreses, és obrir una finestra, altres maneres de fer, altres maneres d'organitzar-se, d'avaluar, i de ben segur que això també ens interroga a la nostra pròpia manera de fer, d'organitzar, d'avaluar el centre educatiu, i de ben segur que teniu preguntes a fer. És el moment, d'obrir aquest debat i de que pugueu fer les vostres preguntes o aportacions. Farem un primer torn, si us sembla bé. Si s'aixequen... Hi ha una mà per allà, dues, una altra, hi ha alguna altra i una tercera. Fem aquestes 3 preguntes.
Gràcies. De les moltes coses interessants que ha dit, personalment m'interessa molt la qüestió d'aprendre, com treballar les emocions a l'escola. És una de les coses que en general molts sabem que fer-se adult limita, en tot cas limita en molts espais i moltes vegades no perquè hem trobat altres sortides a tot el tema emocional. Sembla que com més adult has de ser més autocensurat en aquestes qüestions, no en l'expressió sinó pròpiament fins i tot en les emocions. M'interessaria si ens poguessis donar una mica de detall sobre aquesta qüestió i potser també relacionant-ho amb la qüestió de la resolució de conflictes. Gràcies.
On està? Jordi? Sí, allà.
Moltes gràcies. Crec que hem vist que Suècia està bastant més lluny que 3.000 quilòmetres, que probablement és la distància geogràfica que tenim. Dues preguntes de detall, i no sé si és entrar molt amb la dissecció del sistema suec. Una és amb l'elecció dels directors de centre, el que vostè anomenava els líders de les escoles. Quan deixen de ser-ho, tornen a la docència o realment qui fa l'opció de formar-se com a directiu d'un centre escolar ja entra, diguéssim, per sempre més en aquesta aventura de la gestió. La segona qüestió és molt concreta. Quantes són les hores que a la setmana els professors estan dedicats a l'escola i si ho té present particularment en el treball a l'aula, directament amb els alumnes. I si hi ha algun element de diferència entre el que aquí anomenaríem la primària i la secundària, és a dir, en els diversos grups. Gràcies.
I una altra pregunta per aquí.
Sí, hola, bona nit. Jo volia saber Quants alumnes hi ha per aula, aproximadament, si hi ha un nombre fixe o bé és una qüestió variable en funció de diversos factors, perquè justament un dels problemes que penso que són prou importants a les aules, tant a primària i especialment a secundària, jo soc professora de secundària, és el nombre molt elevat d'alumnat i això dificulta moltíssim les activitats molt més diverses i variades que precisament són les que enriqueixen la varietat. Aquesta, per una banda, és aquesta, una de les preguntes. L'altra, hi ha hagut un moment que quan vostè plantejava els canvis, un canvi important que va haver a l'educació a Suècia, era una franja d'uns anys que van ser dolents i després va haver el canvi en el que es va produir un sistema molt més novedós i millor. Quines eren les causes, si és que les van saber, per què aquesta educació era deficient en principi i quins criteris es van seguir per fer el canvi a una educació millor. Moltes gràcies.
Moltes gràcies. Professor, si pot respondre, i li haig de pregar una certa brevetat amb les respostes perquè complim més o menys amb l'horari previst. Gràcies.
Thank you. Yes, I'll try to be that. The one that is most difficult to be brief with is the first question. How do we work on emotions? Because that is a big question. But I can say very briefly that we work very much by giving students responsibilities, trusting them, and giving a lot of feedback to them. Also creating a lot of situations where they can have their emotions and use their emotions, but get reactions on their emotions. When we look at the way we train them or help them to solve conflicts, for instance, we have institutionalized in Sweden that each week in the grundskola, for instance, you have what we call class council, where you bring up feelings and where you give reactions, the teacher participate, but it's mainly the students, and especially when you grow older, but also the young ones, give reactions to each other. So it's a lot of feedbacking. But I can go on for another night on that topic. So I have to say that there is a good deal to say about it. The appointment of school leaders, what do we do with them when they finish? Well, actually, you are rather mature when you become a school leader in Sweden. The average age is around 45 years old. And then you stay for about 20 years in the job. Most people stay for the whole 20 year. We have a pension age at 65 to 67. We made in 2007, as I said, we made an investigation of why do people stop, and people go into pension. Very few stop because they feel unpleasant in the job. So they stay in job. They stay with the school leadership. I also have to add that school leaders in Sweden are seen as a specific profession. School leaders in Sweden don't teach. You can also become a school leader in Sweden without being a teacher. It's enough that you have pedagogical insights. And that means that as we have a lot of other people working in schools, usually you are very interested in school if you want to become a school leader. But we have school psychologists, we have social workers, nurses, people working with vocational choice, etc. So it's not only teachers there, so we have other people becoming school leaders. How many hours do teachers spend in school? Well, usually they are there at least for 35 hours per week, but 35 hours, that is 60-minute hours. In some schools, they have said to themselves that we shall be there for 40 hours. So this is individual solutions. So we don't have a real national system. We can reach agreements at the school level or in the commune level. But the usual is that teachers are spending with the class as a educator or as a helper of learners. That depends on where they are in the development of what I was talking about earlier. They spend about, if you are a preschool teacher, you are there with the children, it's about 25 hours per week, directly with the children, if you are on this. So I can actually not really tell you in a proper way that we have that system. It's individualized nowadays. How many students are there in the classroom? Actually, we don't participate in the statistics of the European Union on how large our classes are, because we destroyed that system 20 years ago when we said, actually, we don't have classes, we have educational groups. So it's another concept. And it isn't really a class. But if I translate what we have, you could say one statistical understanding of it is that it goes, in Sweden, it goes one teacher on each 7 students. So the ratio is 1 to 7. But in the class or in the situation where you are an educative person, well, at an average, when we were made some investigations some years ago when I was the Director General of the National Agency, we found that people were working together with, when they were between 7 to 11, there were about 20 persons in the room. And when they became a little bit older, they are at average 25, 26 persons in the room. So when they are around 14, 15, 16, then they become larger. But that is not true either, but that was an average. Because if you go with the choices that you have as a student, you go in smaller groups and in bigger groups. So it's a fluctuating system. And since we are highly decentralized, if I would be really correct, and I wouldn't act as your spy in Sweden, I would say, I can't answer your question, because it differs so much. But I will not do that. I show you what we have found in our investigations. Why did we change system? Well, the reasons was that we had a discussion during the Second World War and the years after, where our Social Democrats and our most conservative party, which in European value scale is a sort of a liberal party, they came together and said that the system that we had at that time was really a system that was, I'm trying to find an English word for slösa, waste. It was a waste. It was a wasting system. Wasting of what? Well, we made some interesting research in the early 50s where we said that we have a reserve of talented people in this country that never get educated. So we were making intelligence measurement of young people, and then we looked on how many people of different social classes take at that time our baccalaureate. And we found that the people who belonged to the upper strata in our social system had an intelligence that had a profile, which if we translated that intelligence profile to every strata, you could say that we lost about 20% of the talented people who never get a good education. And that became an economic argument that get the Social Democrats and the Liberals or our conservatives to come together and say, we are not going to waste all these people. We are a small nation. We need to use our talented people. So that was one of the reasons why we said this is a bad system. The other was that we were very critical towards our way of acting as schools and reacting on students who went through the schools and didn't succeed to get enough high marks. So we had them to go another round. They had to repeat a year. And we started to count on that. And we found that that was, well, we had about 1/3 of a year group was actually repeating a year. And then we calculated how much does this cost. And it was a ridiculous high amount of money, not only for the system, but also for the individuals. So we said, let's skip that one. Let's create a school where you are individualizing the passage through the school so that you don't have to repeat classes. At that time, it was about 30% or 35% of a year group. Today, we have 1.5% of a year group that is repeating a class, and that is usually depending on illness, sickness, that you have leukemia or something like that. So that was the two main big reasons that we had a economically badly working system. So let's make it much better. And then we have gone on with creating ABBA and other international success that creates good money for Sweden. And we long believed for Volvo and Saab, but nowadays we will probably lose it to Chinese people.
Moltes gràcies. De fet, hem esgotat el temps, però jo havia dit que fèiem un primer torn. Em sabria greu que quedés alguna pregunta. Si és breu, potser encara la podem fer. Hi ha una pregunta? Ui, quantes preguntes, què farem? Brevetat, sisplau, amb les preguntes. Val? Molt bé, doncs aquí.
Muy breve. Disculpeu, el meu català no és molt bo, l'inglés tampoco. No me queda claro si el director en Suecia hace clase, está directamente en el aula con los alumnos, y de ser así, si el director hace clases, ¿cuántas horas dedica a la semana frente a los alumnos? Gracias.
I can give a very quick answer. The school leader, if I give a quick answer and a short one, the school leader is not obliged to teach. There are no obligations for that. Some school leaders want to teach, then they take the decision to have some hours, but there is no obligation.
Gràcies. Hi havia una altra pregunta per aquí?
Gràcies. Molt ràpidament, jo volia demanar al professor Ekholm si ens podia donar més detalls de les avaluacions externes, especialment les avaluacions nacionals, quines conseqüències tenen, si n'hi ha, a les escoles que tenen resultats més baixos i quines decisions prenen les comunes o les autoritats locals per la millora d'aquestes escoles, especialment en relació amb la pràctica a l'aula dels mestres.
Fem la darrera pregunta, si sembla bé, professor.
Sí, ha parlat del salari individualitzat del professorat. Jo li volia preguntar quins són els factors que influeixen per tenir aquest salari individual i qui és el que pren la decisió d'aquest salari. Paral·lelament, quin és el mecanisme d'accés del professorat a cada lloc de treball. Gràcies.
Gràcies. Professor.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try to answer. About the external evaluation, actually it's if a school shows to have bad results, our school inspection is the external party that have a discussion with the school. The responsibility to make the school better is laid on the commune. So the commune is really responsible, and the commune have to find out if the cause of why this school is producing such a bad result depends on bad leadership or whatever. Then the commune have to act. So it is the decision, the sharing of the responsibility. The state reacts, but the commune have to deal with the problem. And what the consequences are, usually you have a lot of tough discussions, and if there is I mean, there are so many reasons why something can be bad. You have to find individual solutions on it, and you do it. So that is usually a lot of forces are brought in when you solve the problems. Teachers' unions, school leader unions, the commune, etc. So there is a lot of discussions before we really do the tough things. Sometimes people have got fired, but that is very rare. That is usually against the Swedish culture. So we don't do it in the British way. They close schools and they fire school leaders, and we say, oh, we seldom see real hopeless people. We reform them instead. And we don't believe in the British way. What about the individual salary? What are the factors of deciding on what salary are? In each commune you have a good deal of discussion on what are the important factors that we are going to have very transparent, because this is a very important decision to take for teachers and their families and for everyone. So usually it's a negotiation between the teacher unions and the commune. At the commune level you create a sort of criteria. And what is in there? Well, it depends, but usually you find that you need to have good results among the students if you are going to get a higher salary. But you can also find examples where making or taking a leadership role among the teachers, which means that you act as a team leader. In Sweden, you often work in working teams among the teachers, so that is usually there. Also, if you contribute to the knowledge base of the teachers, that is also seen as something very positive. So but you have to go to the commune to see it. But this is three things that is rather often appearing there. Who is taking decisions of the salary? Well, that is, if you look at it legally, it is actually a decision taken by the school director, so to say, the school leader. But that is, you can't take it in a good way without having a negotiation with the teacher union. And of course you have to tell the person who you take the decision for. And usually in most schools you really give a motive. Why did I take this decision? But you also ask for mechanisms well, how do teachers get the job? Is that what you ask for? How we do it is the same with the school leaders. You appoint for a job. And in Sweden you have good competitions between teachers about jobs within the humanistic sector, within language, where it is very easy to get a teacher job is if you are working within the field of natural science, because our engineers or our natural science interested people usually disappear from the school. So we have difficulties to catch people there. We try it and we try over and over again, and usually the best natural science interested people who go through the universities disappear into other branches than schools. But what you do is to apply for a position, and then you have a competition, and if you are lucky you win, or if you are a smart person you apply for a position up far in Lapland, where it is very cold, and you get the position immediately, and they are very happy that they succeeded to get you there, and you will freeze like hell. And you don't see the sun for a couple of months during wintertime.
Bé, moltes gràcies un cop més al professor Mats Ekholm, que ens ha acompanyat en aquest debats d'educació d'aquest vespre. Agrair també al MACBA, que ens acull un cop més en aquesta sala, i també agrair-vos a totes vosaltres i a tots vosaltres l'haver estat aquí, la vostra assistència, i dir-vos que ja sabeu que podeu entrar a la web de Debats d'Educació i sentir la conferència i veure el vídeo de la conferència, i també poder recollir bibliografia i informació d'interès del ponent sempre que vulgueu. També per a aquells que estigueu interessats tenim les dues properes dates dels propers debats d'educació. Tenim el 19 de gener el François Dubé i després el 9 de febrer Jap Dronkers. Són les dues dates dels propers debats d'educació del proper any ja. 19 de gener i 9 de febrer. Res més. Bona nit a totes i a tots i moltes gràcies.